Hey tea buds, we're having tea today. Today I want to talk a little bit about my father, Master Wang. He was a tea master, a Chinese medicine practitioner, a builder, a construction worker, a contractor. We worked a lot on housing projects together out in Oakland, and we also remodeled our own home. So we did a lot of building and work together. And he was also the first guy to ever pour me tea, like when I was a little baby. We'd go on walks to Twin Peaks with the tea crew, and he poured me a little cup of tea in the little cap of his thermos, and he would cool down, and I would drink tea as a kid. So really special memory. But this video isn't just about him. It's also about what tea meant to him, as far as I could gather, as his son, as someone who spent a lot of time with him and drank a lot of tea with him. And it's also a video what tea has come to mean for me. So without further ado, let's begin. Right now I'm just drinking some of our angel's nests, and I'm brewing tea on our Pure Land tea set. So who was Master Wang? Well, for me, he was my dad, but for a lot of people, he was a teacher in the healing arts, a teacher in Taoism, a teacher in philosophy, and a teacher in ancient Chinese wisdom. He was really into learning. He was always learning and researching. Even though my dad's name was Master Wang, you could have also called him Student Wang, because he was always a student to life. He was always a student to his practice. And when it came to tea, one of the reasons why he was so good at tea and why people respected his tea is because he was always curious about the tea. He was curious about where it came from. He was curious about the farmers who grew it. He was curious about its effects on the body. And he was curious about the mind, body, and spiritual connection. He was curious about nature. So curiosity was something that I always tied with my dad, a very curious yet stubborn person. He was Chinese. He grew up in a village in Yunnan called Tengchong. I want to talk a little bit about his childhood in Yunnan and some of the stories that I've heard. I don't know all of his childhood stories in Yunnan, China, but I know some of them. I know as a kid, he would help his sisters go and gather firewood because they cooked using firewood in their home. I also heard that when my dad was a kid, he was a real popular kid, real smart and bright and intelligent, and he really loved spending a lot of time studying late into the night. He would study English, and he got really good at it. And that's one of the reasons why he was able to come to America. He eventually left his hometown village of Tengchong, Yunnan, and was selected to go to Beijing University. He ended up majoring in economics there, international economics. And during his time there, a lot happened. There was actually a student revolution happening in Beijing at the time and some political unrest in China. If you guys haven't heard of the Tiananmen Square protest, you should look it up. But that was around the time that my dad was in university in Beijing, and it deeply affected him. At the time, not only was there a political crisis going on around him, but he also had an internal health crisis going on. He wasn't exactly the most healthy person in those days. He would eat a lot of junk food, a lot of deep fried food, a lot of oily foods, and he was feeling pretty sick in those days from what I heard. And at the time, he was really reaching the last straw on the camel's back with his health. And at a certain point, he was at this protest at the Tiananmen Square, and he did the hunger strike. He participated with the other students, and it really knocked his health for a loop. He fainted, he went into a unconscious state, and he woke up in the hospital. And that's where he decided that he really needed to take his health seriously. And around that time, he met a Chinese medicine teacher, and in China, teachers are masters. They still have the apprentice system in China in some parts of the country. It's a different format of education, but it still exists. And so he became an apprentice to a Chinese medicine master and studied with him. And it wasn't a traditional intellectual education. He actually assisted this teacher and traveled with him and helped him out in different pop-up clinics around China. So he got a real hands-on experience in learning Chinese medicine. One day he ended up at a Tai Chi festival. It was one of the first international Tai Chi festivals in China. And that coincides with my mom's story, Rachel. That's where they met. They met at the Tai Chi festival. And so when they met at the Tai Chi festival, my dad having that experience in English and knowing how to speak the language, and my mom only knowing a bit of Chinese, but really being into Chinese medicine like my dad, they were able to connect. They were able to form a connection. So up to this point, it's really one of those stories where my dad could have gone down a different path. He could have studied economics and business. And his friends were doing serious things. They were helping start the first Chinese stock market. But rather than going down the business route, he decided to go down the healing route. He decided to take his health more seriously. So my mom and dad got married in about 2 weeks, which in my opinion was a little bit impulsive, but you know, people were at a different pace back then. So they got to San Francisco and they started hustling. They would go and do body work on the streets. They would go to festivals, and slowly but surely they were able to start a Chinese medicine clinic. And eventually I was born about 5 years later, and I grew up in this home/clinic space. And I remember clients would come in, sit down, and my mom or my dad would pour tea for them, and we would have tea snacks out a little bit like this. And they would be like, "Where is this tea from? It's so good." And my dad would have to explain that tea was originally from Yunnan, and he's from Yunnan. And this tea is Puer, it's been fermented, and how all these teas come from the same plant, and that it's the processing that makes it unique and special. People didn't know what the plant actually looked like. Like a lot of people don't know what the coffee plant actually looks like. But for a long time, tea remained just something that they would serve in the front of the clinic. It was just something that they would offer their clients to make their stay more comfortable. It was complimentary. Eventually, my parents got divorced, and so my dad moved out into his business at the time, which was called Medicine Buddha. And it was around that time that I think that he started to take Puer tea more seriously. It was around 2008. And during that time, there was an economic shift for the tea industry. What happened is that Puer tea was going up and up and up in value, and then all of a sudden the bubble popped and the value of certain Puer teas dropped significantly. And my dad, understanding economics, bought the dip. He came in at the time, he raised some money, and around 2009, he went and he bought a bunch of tea during that dip. I think he really loved that Puer was connected to value, and Puer tea would get more valuable over time. It must have reminded him about his studies in economics. It's like stocks. And that Puer tea is also a medicine. Tea was an ingredient in traditional Chinese medicine formulas. So these two elements and these two values, business, economics, and medicine and healing coming together, Puer tea was the perfect thing for him. I can see why he loved it so much. I definitely think that the divorce took a hit on my dad, like it would on any man. And it took a hit on my mom as well, and on us, the whole family, because we were a nuclear family unit before that. And afterwards, everything was just different. We didn't celebrate Christmas together. We didn't celebrate birthdays together. Not that my dad exactly enjoyed celebrating Christmas or birthdays, but that ritual, that doing things together as a family wasn't as real after the divorce happened. But he had to pour that grief, that death of a marriage, into something. And I think tea was not only his coping mechanism, but became his art form, a way for him to express himself and to figure out his own feelings. It must have been really interesting for him because tea was always in his life. He grew up drinking it as a kid. He was in Yunnan surrounded by tea. It was as normal as music is to Mozart. Or I don't know if that's a good analogy. It was as normal as crackheads are to the Tenderloin. Okay, that's messed up. But it was common. You would always have tea in the house. You would always drink tea when you were at a friend's place, growing up in Tengchong, growing up in Yunnan, where he did. I spent a lot of time drinking tea during the weekends when I was with him. He would have the Sunday clinic where he would pour tea for free and host a ton of people. And I would always be sitting next to him drinking tea. Drinking tea with him was really nice. He had a really grounding energy. He provided a lot of safety for the people around him. He was non-judgmental most of the time, unless he was trying to tease you. But for the most part, it felt like a really safe place to be in. He also brought so much laughter and humor into the room. He knew how to crack a joke. He knew how to lighten the mood and break the ice in the room. When people talk about my dad, I feel different things. Sometimes I feel sort of protective, like you don't know who he was, you don't know who Master Wang was. But I always hear the same underlying thing, which is that my dad was always in service to healing, and he was always in service to self-love. Parts of what my dad were in service to, I'm also still in service to. I'm really in service to how tea can help people connect, how it can be a medium for conversation and for bringing people together. I'm still figuring out exactly what tea means to me because it's different for me. It's different than what it was for him. I was born with better health. My whole thing isn't fixing my health. I just want to keep my health healthy. If I could have a cup of tea with my dad right now, what would I say to him? Like, what would I want to talk about right now? I would first off say, look at this tea set. Like, we worked our ass off to build this, Dad. What do you think of it? And he'd probably have some criticism. He'd say, well, you could do better material on this tea tray, and you gotta go bigger. You gotta go bigger, because you either go big or you go home. But he would be proud of me, and that feels good. And then we would just get into a deep philosophical conversation together that I can't even fathom. But if I could have a cup of tea with him, I would just want to say to him that I love you, and I just love you. I would tell him that I love him a lot. And I'd want to give him a hug. Yeah. I'm going to continue making, long form content like this, sharing more about our tea stories. There's different parts of the adventure to talk about and go through. But I just want to give like a sort of brief introduction to who my dad was, who Master Wang was. He's a really complex character. He cared deeply about people. He was a people person. So thanks for watching this video. If you want to learn more about our teas, if you want to check out this tea set, you can go find it on our link in bio, or www.purelandtea.com.